History isn't just something you read about in dusty old books. Sometimes, the most epic stories are written inside our very own body. Deep within every one of your cells, there's a molecule called DNA. Think of it as a biological library, holding the records of your ancestors, tracing a path back through generations, telling the story of where you come from. And for over 800 years, one of the most incredible genetic stories in human history was a silent one, a secret passed down through bloodlines, families, and generations all across the vast continents of Asia and Europe. It was hidden in plain sight, waiting for the right tools to unlock it. Today, thanks to the power of modern science, we can finally read that story. This is the tale of how the Mongol Empire didn't just conquer lands, but left a powerful, lasting genetic mark on all of humanity. It's a story of unprecedented movement, of immense power, of survival against the odds, and of a legacy that continues to live and breathe within millions of people today. Back in the early 2000s, a team of geneticists was studying Y chromosome. This particular chromosome is passed down from father to son, almost like a family surname, making it a fantastic tool for tracing paternal ancestry. As they analyzed DNA samples from populations across Asia, they stumbled upon something truly astonishing. A particular Y chromosome lineage was unusually common. It wasn't just in one place. It appeared again and again, from the Pacific coast all the way to the Caspian Sea. About 8% of men in this huge region shared this same genetic signature. That translates to roughly 16 million men at the time, or about 1 in every 200 men on the entire planet. This wasn't a random coincidence. The widespread and uniform distribution of this lineage pointed to a single, explosive origin event, something that happened not in the distant mists of prehistoric time, but relatively recently. So, the big question was, who was the original ancestor? The scientists mapped out the geographic spread of the lineage. It fanned out perfectly from a central point, modern Mongolia. And when they calculated how long ago this lineage began to spread so rapidly, all the evidence pointed to a period around the 13th century. Mongolia, the 13th century, and a single lineage, spreading with incredible speed and success. All signs pointed to one legendary figure and his descendants. Genghis Khan. The researchers proposed that this widespread genetic marker was the Y chromosome of Genghis Khan himself, or a very close paternal relative. They dubbed it the star cluster because of how it radiated outwards from a central point. It was a perfect storm of historical and genetic evidence coming together. How could one man and his descendants have such a monumental genetic impact? The answer lies in the unique history and social structure of the Mongol Empire. Under Genghis Khan and his successors, the Mongols established the largest contiguous land empire in history. This wasn't just a military conquest. It was a complete reshaping of societies across Eurasia. The Khans and the Mongol elite had many wives and concubines, and consequently, a vast number of children. These children, particularly the sons, were often placed in positions of power, ruling over the conquered territories. For example, Genghis Khan had 4 main sons with his primary wife, Urt, and each founded their own khanate, or their sons, in turn, continued this pattern. This combination of social status, political power, and a system that favored the proliferation of the ruling lineage created a unique situation where one man's genetic heritage could be spread with unprecedented efficiency. It wasn't just conquest, it was the establishment of a ruling dynasty whose biological legacy was as vast as its territory. But this isn't just a story about ancient rulers. It's a story about us. The fact that a single genetic lineage could spread so far and wide is a powerful reminder of how interconnected we all are. Our DNA is a mosaic, a collection of stories from countless ancestors who moved, migrated, and built new lives. The legacy of the Mongol Empire isn't just in historical texts or archaeological ruins. It's encoded in the DNA of millions of people walking the earth today, many of whom may have no idea about this part of their deep ancestry. It shows that history isn't a passive thing of the past. It's an active, living force that shapes our present in ways we are only just beginning to understand. Who knows what other incredible stories are waiting to be discovered, hidden within. Picture a vast, endless ocean of grass stretching to the horizon. This was the home of the Mongols, the great grasslands of Central Asia. For centuries, these nomadic people lived a life tied to the rhythm of the seasons and the needs of their herds. They weren't farmers tied to one piece of land. Their home was wherever their horses could take them. Imagine waking up not in a solid house, but in a circular, felt-covered tent called a gyr. You could pack up your entire home in just a few hours and move to find fresh pastures for your sheep, goats, and of course, your prized horses. The horse was everything to the Mongols. It was their transport, their partner in hunting, and their greatest weapon in war. Children learned to ride almost as soon as they could walk. They were so at home on horseback that ancient writers claimed they ate, slept, and even conducted meetings from the saddle. This incredible horsemanship made them some of the most mobile people in the world. Life on the steppe was tough. The winters were brutally cold, and the summers could be scorching hot. Resources were often scarce, which meant competition between different tribes was fierce. Survival depended on skill, strength, and unwavering loyalty to your family and clan. From a young age, every Mongol learned to hunt with a bow and arrow, skills that translated directly to the battlefield. They were expert archers, able to shoot with deadly accuracy while galloping at full speed. This constant struggle for survival forged people who were disciplined, resilient, and incredibly tough. Their society was built on a complex system of tribes and clans, each led by a chief. Loyalty was the glue that held everything together. Betrayal was the worst possible crime. They followed a traditional spiritual belief system known as Tengrism, worshipping the eternal blue sky Tengri, and honoring their ancestors. Life was governed by a strong code of conduct and ancient traditions passed down through generations. These traditions emphasized unity, courage, and respect for elders and leaders. For a long time, the various Mongol tribes were scattered and often fought amongst themselves. They were a formidable but fractured people, living a nomadic existence largely unnoticed by the great settled civilizations to their south and west. To the powerful empires of China and Persia, they were just another group of hardy barbarians from the north. Nobody could have predicted that, from these scattered tribes, a single leader would emerge to unite them. No one could have imagined that these horsemen from the steppes were on the verge of creating the largest land empire the world has ever known, forever changing the course of history. This was the world that shaped the Mongols. It was a world of endless skies, harsh realities, and unbreakable bonds. It was the training ground that prepared them for their incredible journey onto the world stage. The story of their rise is one of the most dramatic in all of human history, and it all began here, on the vast, windswept steppes of 12th century Mongolia. A boy was born clutching a blood clot in his hand, a sign. It was said that he was destined for greatness. His name was Temujin, but his early life was far from great. It was a brutal cycle of survival. His father, a minor chieftain, was poisoned by a rival tribe, leaving Temujin's family abandoned and cast out. They were forced to live off the land, foraging for roots and hunting small animals just to stay alive. Temujin was even captured and enslaved, forced to wear a wooden collar like an animal. But these hardships didn't break him. They forged him. In the unforgiving crucible of the Mongolian plains, Temujin learned that survival wasn't enough. To truly live, one had to command respect, build alliances, and wield power. This young outcast began to gather followers, not through birthright, but through sheer charisma and unwavering resolve. He rescued his wife, Bert, after she was kidnapped, a daring raid that cemented his reputation as a formidable leader. He understood the heart of his people. The Mongol tribes were fractured, constantly at war with one another, caught in a cycle of revenge and betrayal. Temujin offered them a different path. Unity. He promised an end to the infighting that had plagued them for generations. He envisioned a single, unified nation, bound not by clan, but by loyalty to him. His message resonated deeply. Warriors flocked to his banner, drawn by his vision and his proven strength. He rewarded skill and loyalty above all else, promoting men from humble backgrounds to positions of power. This merit-based system was revolutionary, creating an army that was not just strong, but fiercely devoted. By 1206, at a great assembly known as a Kurultai, the unified Mongol tribes proclaimed Temujin their supreme leader. They gave him a new name, one that would echo through history: Genghis Khan, the universal ruler. With the tribes united, Genghis Khan turned his attention to transforming his people into the most dominant military force the world had ever seen. He organized his army based on a decimal system: units of 10, 100, 1,000, and 10,000. This structure allowed for incredible flexibility, discipline, and rapid communication on the battlefield using a system of flags and horns. His law, the Yasa, was strict and absolute. It forbade theft, adultery, and betrayal among Mongols, creating a level of internal peace and order that was previously unimaginable. But the Yasa also demanded absolute obedience to the Khan. With a unified nation and an unstoppable army at his back, Genghis Khan's ambition grew beyond the steppes. His goal was no longer just survival or even unity. It was conquest. He looked south to the wealthy Jin dynasty in China, west to the powerful Khwarezmian Empire in Persia, and beyond. His campaigns were characterized by brilliant strategy, psychological warfare, and ruthless efficiency. He would often demand submission, and if a city surrendered, its people were often spared. But if they resisted, the consequences were devastating. His horsemen, skilled archers who could shoot with deadly accuracy while riding at full gallop, became the stuff of nightmares for their enemies. They moved with incredible speed, living off the land and their herds, able to cover vast distances that other armies found impossible. The Mongol Empire, born from the vision of a single, determined man, would become the largest contiguous land empire in history. Genghis Khan's legacy is complex, a unifier for his own people, a terrifying conqueror for others. He was a master strategist, a nation builder, and a force of nature who rose from the lowest depths of society to reshape the known world. His story is a powerful testament to how a single individual, forged in hardship and driven by an unyielding will, can change the course of history forever. What began with a boy abandoned on the steppe ended with an empire that stretched across continents. Thanks for watching. If you found this journey into the past fascinating, make sure to like this video and subscribe for more epic stories from history. We'll see you in the next one. Have you ever wondered how one empire managed to conquer a fifth of the entire world in just a few decades? It sounds like something out of a fantasy novel, but this is the real story of the Mongols. Forget what you think you know from movies. We are about to uncover how a nomadic people from the steppes of Central Asia built the largest contiguous land empire in human history, and in doing so, reshaped the world forever. Let's rewind to the early 13th century. The world was a patchwork of disconnected kingdoms and empires. Traveling from Beijing to Baghdad was a perilous journey that could take years, if it was even possible. But then, everything changed. Under the leadership of Genghis Khan, the Mongol tribes united and exploded onto the world stage. Their expansion was unlike anything seen before or since. It was relentless, strategic, and incredibly fast. How did they do it? The Mongol army was a force of nature. Every man was a highly skilled horseman and archer, trained from childhood to live and fight in the saddle. Their composite bows could pierce armor from a distance, and their cavalry tactics were revolutionary. They used feigned retreats to lure enemies into traps and psychological warfare, to make cities surrender without a fight. They weren't just brute force. They were masters of military strategy and logistics. They crossed the scorching Gobi Desert, the freezing Siberian tundra, and the towering mountains of Afghanistan terrains that had stopped other armies for centuries. Within Genghis Khan's lifetime, the Mongols had conquered vast territories, but his successors, like his son Gedai and his grandson, Kublai Khan, pushed the boundaries even further. At its peak, the Mongol Empire stretched from the shores of the Pacific Ocean all the way to the gates of Vienna in Eastern Europe. It included modern-day China, Korea, Russia, Persia, and large parts of the Middle East. Think about that for a second. An empire so vast that the sun was always shining on some part of it. But the Mongol story isn't just about conquest. What they built after the fighting stopped is arguably even more important. They created something historians call the Pax Mongolica, or the Mongol Peace. For the first time in history, a single power controlled the ancient Silk Road. This made trade and travel safer and more efficient than ever before. The Mongols established a sophisticated postal system called the Yam, with relay stations providing fresh horses and supplies for messengers. A message could travel across Asia in a matter of weeks, an incredible speed for the time. This new global network didn't just move goods. It moved ideas, technologies, and cultures. Gunpowder, the printing press, and the magnetic compass, all Chinese innovations, made their way to Europe, where they would fuel the Renaissance and the Age of Discovery. Silk, spices, and porcelain from the East became staples in European markets. In the other direction, Western science, medicine, and art traveled eastward. Marco Polo's famous journey was only possible because of the peace and security the Mongols provided. This exchange was a two-way street. The Mongols themselves were incredibly open to new ideas. They were patrons of arts and sciences, and were famously tolerant of different religions. In their capital cities, you could find Buddhist monks, Christian priests, Muslim imams, and Taoist sages all living and debating. This cultural fusion created a vibrant, cosmopolitan society that was centuries ahead of its time. The Mongol Empire connected the world in a way it had never been before, creating the first truly globalized era. They weren't just conquerors. They were the architects of a new world order. They tore down walls, built bridges, and in the process, laid the groundwork for the modern world we live in today. The scale of their achievement is staggering, and their legacy continues to influence us in ways we're only just beginning to understand. Have you ever wondered where you really come from? Not just your parents or grandparents, but the long, winding story that led to you. It's a tale written, not in books, but in our very own DNA. A story often set in motion by the rise and fall of great empires. Imagine the Roman Empire at its peak. It wasn't just a political power. It was a massive network of people on the move. A Roman soldier from Italy might be stationed in Britain. He could meet a local Celtic woman, fall in love, and start a family. Their children would carry a mix of Italian and British ancestry. Now, fast forward a few generations, their descendants might not even remember that Italian soldier, but his genetic signature is still there, woven into the family tree, a quiet echo of a distant past. This isn't just a Roman story. Think about the Mongol Empire, stretching from Asia to Europe. Genghis Khan and his armies didn't just conquer lands, they connected them. A merchant traveling the Silk Road, a diplomat on a mission, a soldier settling in a newly acquired territory. All these movements created new families and new genetic blends. Studies have shown that a surprising percentage of men in a vast region of Asia share a common paternal ancestor from that era. It's a stunning example of how one historical event can leave a genetic footprint across continents. Or consider the Spanish Empire in the Americas. When Spanish conquistadors and settlers arrived, they encountered vibrant indigenous populations. The mixing that occurred over centuries created the rich, diverse cultures we see today in Latin America. This process, known as mestiçage, is a living, breathing testament to how empires reshape not just maps, but people. The DNA of many individuals in Mexico, Peru, and beyond tells a story of both European and indigenous roots, a direct result of that historic encounter. It's a pattern we see again and again throughout history. The Umayyad Caliphate brought Arab and Berber influences across North Africa and into Spain. The British Empire scattered people from the British Isles all over the globe, from Australia to India to Canada, while also bringing people from its colonies back to Britain. Each expansion, each migration, was like a thread being pulled across a giant loom, weaving a more complex and interconnected human tapestry. What does this mean for us today? It means that our DNA is like a personal history book. It contains chapters we never knew existed. You might think of yourself as purely one nationality, but your genes could tell a different story of a Viking sailor who settled in your ancestral village, a Silk Road trader who passed through, or a Roman legionary who decided to call a distant province home. These ancient movements remind us that the idea of a pure population is largely a myth. We are all, in a sense, products of migration and mixing. History isn't just something that happened in the past. It's a living force that continues to flow through our veins. The soldier who settled, the merchant who traveled, the family that moved for a better life. Their journeys didn't end with them. They continued through their children and their children's children, all the way down to us. We are the quiet continuation of their stories. So, the next time you look in the mirror, remember you're looking at a piece of living history, a map of human journeys stretching back thousands. Have you ever wondered what makes you, you? Why you have your dad's nose or your mom's smile? The secret lies in something incredibly tiny but unbelievably powerful, hidden inside almost every cell in your body. It's called DNA, and it's basically the ultimate instruction manual for life. Think of it as a massive, detailed book that spells out everything from your eye color and hair texture to how tall you'll grow. Every living thing, from the smallest bug to the largest whale, has its own unique DNA blueprint. This biological book is written in a special code made of just for chemical letters A, T, C, and G. The specific order of these letters forms genes, which are like individual recipes in our instruction manual. One gene might say make brown eyes, while another says create curly hair. Humans have about 20,000 of these genes, all working together to build and operate our bodies. It's mind-boggling to think that this complex code, billions of letters long, is coiled up so tightly that it fits inside a space you could and even see without a powerful microscope. Now, let's talk about how we get this instruction book. We inherit our DNA from our parents. You get half from your mom and half from your dad. This is why you're a unique mix of both of them. This DNA is packaged into structures called chromosomes. Most humans have 23 pairs of TEM for a total of 46. One of these pairs determines our biological sex. Typically, females have 2X chromosomes, while males have 1X and 1Y chromosome, and this is where our story gets really interesting, especially for tracing family history. The Y chromosome has a very special job. It's passed down directly from father to son, almost like a family heirloom that's been handed through the generations. Unlike other chromosomes that get mixed and shuffled up with each new generation, the Y chromosome stays remarkably unchanged. Think of it like a surname that passes down the male line, but on a genetic level. It's a direct, unbroken link to your father, your grandfather, your great-grandfather, and so on, stretching back thousands and thousands of years. Because the Y chromosome is passed down so consistently, it acts as a historical marker. Scientists and genealogists can study it to trace paternal ancestry deep into the past. Tiny, harmless changes, called mutations, occasionally happen in the Y chromosome's code over many generations. These mutations are like little footnotes added to the family's genetic story. By comparing these markers in the DNA of different men around the world, scientists can build a giant family tree for all of humanity. They can see how different groups of people are related and map out the ancient migration paths our ancestors took as they spread across the globe out of Africa tens of thousands of years ago. For example, by analyzing the Y chromosome, researchers have been able to trace the lineage of historical figures like Genghis Khan, or even find connections between men living today who had no idea they shared a common ancestor centuries ago. It's a powerful tool that connects us not just to our immediate family, but to the entire epic story of human history. So, that tiny Y chromosome isn't just a piece of biology. It's a time capsule, a direct message from your ancient forefathers, telling a story that's written into the very core of who you are. Have you ever wondered about your ancestors? Not just your grandparents or great-grandparents, but people who lived hundreds, even thousands of years ago. What if I told you that millions of men alive today might all be descended from one single, incredibly powerful man who lived 800 years ago? It sounds like science fiction, but it's a real scientific discovery that has researchers buzzing. This is the incredible story of the Genghis Khan gene. Let's rewind to the early 2000s. A team of international geneticists embarked on a massive project. They collected and analyzed DNA samples from thousands of men across a huge stretch of the globe, from the Pacific coast of Asia all the way to the Caspian Sea in Europe. They were looking at the Y chromosome, which is passed down directly from father to son, almost unchanged through generations. It's like a genetic surname, a signature that can trace a male lineage back through time. As they sorted through all this data, a shocking pattern emerged. A significant number of men, about 1 in every 12 in the regions they studied, shared a nearly identical Y chromosome. This wasn't just a coincidence. For so many people across such a vast area to have the same genetic marker meant they must have all descended from a common ancestor. But who was this mystery man? And when did he live? The scientists did what's called a molecular clock calculation. By looking at the tiny, predictable mutations that have occurred in the DNA over centuries, they could estimate when this common ancestor lived. Their calculations pointed to a period roughly 800 years ago, right around the 13th century. This date immediately set off alarm bells for historians. The 13th century was the era of one of the most powerful and expansive empires the world has ever known, the Mongol Empire. At the heart of this empire was, of course, Genghis Khan. He and his sons built a domain that stretched from China to Eastern Europe. The historical accounts of Genghis Khan and his descendants are filled with tales of conquest, but also of a vast number of wives, concubines, and children. The ruling elite had unparalleled opportunities to spread their genes far and wide. The scientists realized they might have stumbled upon the genetic footprint of the great Khan himself, or at least someone from his immediate ruling family. The evidence is compelling. The geographical area where this Y chromosome is most common perfectly overlaps with the former Mongol Empire. The timing is spot on, and the social structure of the time, where a powerful ruler and his sons had countless offspring, provides the perfect mechanism for this genetic lineage to explode across the population. While we can't dig up Genghis Khan to get a direct DNA sample, the circumstantial evidence is incredibly strong. He's the #1 suspect for being this genetic superfather. So what does this mean today? It's estimated that as many as 16 million men across Asia, and even some in Europe, carry this specific genetic marker. That's about 0.5% of the entire male population of the world. Think about that for a second. One man, through his descendants, has left a genetic legacy of a scale that is almost unimaginable. It's a testament to how history isn't just something we read about in books. It's written into our very DNA. This discovery is more than just a cool historical fact. It shows us the power of genetics to unlock the secrets of our past. It connects millions of people who may look different, speak different languages, and live in different cultures, all through a shared, ancient ancestor. It makes you wonder, what other incredible stories are hiding in our genes, just waiting to be discovered? Could you be a carrier of this legacy? The story of our human family is far. Have you ever wondered if you might be related to royalty? It sounds like something out of a fairy tale, but the truth is, a surprising number of people might have a distant, yet tangible, connection to some of history's most powerful rulers. Think about Genghis Khan, for example. His name alone conjures images of a vast empire stretching across Asia. But beyond the conquests and the legends, there's a fascinating story of legacy written in our very DNA. Powerful rulers, especially those who built massive empires, often had large families. We're talking about not just 1 or 2 children, but many, with multiple partners. This wasn't just a personal choice, it was often a strategic one. Marriages were a tool of diplomacy, a way to forge alliances and secure loyalty. The children of these rulers were married off to nobles and leaders in different regions, from the heart of the empire to its farthest flung territories. This created a vast web of interconnected families, all linked back to a single, powerful ancestor. Now, imagine this happening, generation after generation. Each child has more children, and they, in turn, have their own. The number of descendants explodes exponentially. A ruler might have dozens of children, who then have hundreds of grandchildren, and thousands of great-grandchildren. Within just a few centuries, we're talking about tens of thousands, even millions of people who can trace their lineage back to that one individual. Let's take a closer look at the mechanics of this. It's simple math. Really, if one person has 10 children, and each of them has 5 children, you've already got 50 grandchildren. If that pattern continues, the family tree doesn't just grow, it blossoms into a massive forest. This was the reality for the families of many emperors and kings throughout history. Their primary goal was to secure their dynasty, and having many heirs was the best way to do that. As these empires expanded, so did their bloodlines. The children and grandchildren of rulers didn't just stay in the capital city. They were sent to govern distant provinces, lead armies, or marry into local influential families. This spread the royal genetic material far and wide. Soldiers, merchants, and administrators also moved across the empire, carrying their family lines with them. People from different cultures and regions began to mix in ways they never had before. Think about the Silk Road, for example. It wasn't just a trade route for silk and spices. It was a highway for people, cultures, ideas, and yes, genes flowed freely along this ancient network. A descendant of a powerful Khan might end up marrying a merchantess daughter in a bustling city thousands of miles away. Their children would then carry that blended heritage forward. Over time, these distinct family lines became woven into the broader tapestry of the human population. This isn't some grand, secret conspiracy or a deliberate genetic engineering project. It's simply the natural, organic result of history unfolding. It's about population dynamics. When one group becomes particularly successful and powerful, its members, especially those at the top, tend to have more surviving offspring. Their genes, by default, become more common in the subsequent gene pool. This process is amplified by historical events. The Mongol Empire, for instance, connected the East and West like never before, leading to unprecedented population movement. The Roman Empire did the same for the Mediterranean world. These vast political structures created melting pots, where people from diverse backgrounds met, mingled, and started families. As a result, a genetic signature that was once confined to a small tribe in the Mongolian steppe could, over centuries, find its way into populations across Asia and Europe. So, when scientists today find that a significant percentage of men in a certain region share a common paternal ancestor from 1,000 years ago, it's not as shocking as it sounds. It's a testament to the power of history, migration, and the simple mathematics of reproduction. The legacy of these powerful rulers isn't just found in history books or crumbling ruins. It's alive and well, carried within the DNA of countless people today. Could you be one of them? It's impossible to say for sure without a DNA test. Of course, but the statistical probability is more interesting than you might think. The further back you go, the more ancestors you have. Go back 30 generations, and you have over 1 billion potential ancestors, which is more people than were alive at the time. This means we are all related, sharing common ancestors if you go back far enough. So, the idea that one of those ancestors might have worn a crown is not so far-fetched after all. It's a powerful reminder that history is not just a story about the past. It's a story about us. Thanks for watching. If you found this fascinating, be sure to like this video and subscribe for more deep dives into the amazing stories hidden within our history and our DNA. See you next time.